Hello, beautiful, and welcome to the podcast where we're moving the conversation forward about the choices you make in your daily life. I'm your host, Monica Cox, and I'm here right alongside of you, learning, growing, observing, and trying to make better choices consciously and subconsciously. Together, we're going to become better versions of ourselves and have raw, honest, open conversations about the things that truly affect our lives. And maybe, just maybe, finally get to a place where everyone else's BS doesn't trigger us. Thoughts on the difference between confidence and arrogancy. And I kind of got to this place of like, well, is there truly something wrong with being arrogant? I don't know.
I don't think
Because
so.
it's kind of like if you're so in your truth, you know that you're willing to step out of your truth as well. And I think people don't like that. I think people like each other in their boxes. Like you have to pick a side, right? Like that's what the extreme is right now, right? Like I saw this really popular TikToker like pissed off at Beyonce because Beyonce hasn't taken a stand. And like the little comments were like, Taylor Swift hasn't either. And I'm just sitting there going like, girl, you are a highly, she's like a spiritual person, right? And she's funny,
Yeah.
but like I'm like, you like, what the fuck? Like, why do you want these people to be so in these boxes? Because that means like it's rigid.
Right.
And being confident about something is arrogancy just like the next level? I'm not sure.
Yeah. I don't know. And I know a lot of people are gonna probably take this into like a genderfied role. And I'll acknowledge it here for just a second, but I don't want to spend too much time on it because I think that it's just a bullshit way of like moving through conversations like this is to be like, well, a man could be confident, but a woman becomes arrogant, like
Mm,
when they say the same thing, right? Let's move. That's, I feel like if there is any sort of like level of that's like a third grade argument, like can we like graduate past it?
yeah.
So I'll acknowledge it for the moment of like, yes, like we could go there, but so many people have, so let's graduate above that. um
And I think one of the things I said, because I mean, I need to like get my hands on a few like Trump autobiographies, right? Because I am very fascinated with this man's ability to create this fucking reality that we all can like look at and go, what the hell? But at the same time, when you're really looking at it from like a conscious create your reality perspective, you're like, this man's doing it and he's doing it on an arrogant level. And I think I brought up of like, well, when does that arrogancy start hurting people?
yeah,
And
yeah,
maybe
and maybe
that's where it needs to
that's
be checked.
exactly, yeah. I think, but and here's another nuance of like, how willing are people to look and stop being just a them, right, or just themselves, and actually looking at how they're affecting others, right? And this goes back to a conversation we've had too, and probably a good thing to come back to it, of responsibility, of personal
Mm.
responsibility, right? Because a lot of the times personal responsibility is really bringing that conversation back to yourself and your own choices, and looking in inward and looking at yourself, and not worrying about other people. But at some point the pendulum says, okay, well, we're so in this that it, all of a sudden it's spider webs, and all of a sudden you're right back to this. Oh, influencing people. Oh, my choices do affect other people. I can't just go off the grid. I can't just live on a mountaintop. I
Mm-hmm.
have to go back into the bar and see how my skills have been working, right? And where does how are people being affected on the macro
Mm-hmm.
because of this? And I think this is where people get frustrated. spiritual or not, they get frustrated because they're like, wait a second, I I'm learning this one lesson about trying to be okay with me, of trying to elevate myself, of trying to do whatever, and all of a sudden my confidence and my abilities and my skills and my gifts and my talents, right? Now all of a sudden I'm too confident and I'm arrogant now, and now people are looking and saying, well, why aren't you influencing people positively?
Mm-hmm.
But wait, now you were saying that I'm arrogant. So do you really want me to be influencing people? Because if I'm arrogant, then, so where is this line? And I'm starting to right now feel like, screw the line.
Well, don't you think the
And
line gets created because, like, let's just say you're equal, right? You're just
right.
either on the same level of a video game or the same level or like the same path, right? And you just keep walking and that other person gets distracted, right? Or
Hmm.
won't look at whatever their triggers are, and you just keep going and you're willing and you're like, okay, you know I had a session with you a few days ago, and this is what I say to anyone who I go for coaching or healing or whatever you want to call it. Just tell me what my bullshit is. I am not going to
Yeah.
be offended, like, because I'm done with it. And I'm at a point where there's sometimes I can't see it. And so I do need another set of eyes to highlight for me, and then obviously use my discernment, whether it feels good or not. But I'm like, thank you. That's like me getting a mushroom. Like I watch Mario Brothers with my kids, and I was like, this is life. Like everyone just
Yeah.
needs to eat mushrooms and level up and get
Yes.
superpowers, right? And then it's always like they're only going to last so long, so you got to keep continuing and you know
Right.
and I think that line that people start getting mad at you because they are now looking at you that you're no longer confident, you're arrogant, is because you've leveled up. You could just keep continuing going. And you have to act like Trump. You have to act like your shit doesn't stink to
Yeah.
keep going where you want to go. And yeah, I do all of a sudden think that arrogancy is a better word to describe where you're at, but also at the same time, are you being radically self-honest with everyone around you, including yourself, of like, okay, is my arrogancy service
Yeah.
or ego?
Yeah. And being able to say, what are the next appropriate steps?
Mm.
Can you apologize if apologizing is necessary? Can you stand in your truth and say, you know what, I get what I said, but I don't feel like I need to apologize for it. This is something that women, really truly struggle with, of, automatically thinking that they need to apologize for everything. You don't need
Mm-hmm.
to apologize for everything. Hell, I would go so far as maybe we shouldn't be apologizing for anything.
Mm.
Just because we've spent so much time apologizing for everything, apologizing for how we look, apologizing how we talk, apologizing how we're, interacting, whatever it is, maybe we need a little bit of time where we stop apologizing to be able to get to the other place, so that we can then maybe find that medium somewhere. So at the very least we get used to the spectrum, the homeostasis element of shifting back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that we don't need to be apologizing for things. Like there aren't times when apologizing is necessary. Of course there are.
I apologize
But
to my kids all the time. I'm like, sorry, mommy's lost her shit again.
but like I felt so empowered the other day. Not the other day, it happened a while ago. I've been having some stuff happen, some personal stuff happen, and it's having downstream effects. But in the moment, like quite immediately after, one of the things that came out of my mouth was, I'm not apologizing for what I said. And I'll be honest, it wasn't nice.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't nice. And I said it to somebody who I had, for a long time, over a decade, almost 2 decades, I had been incredibly respectful to, and never said anything, you know, out out of bounds to this person. And I stood there and was very calm, and was very confident in the fact that I was not going to apologize for what I said.
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell you, it was one of the best feelings I had ever had because I was not making any excuses, but I was very clear about my boundaries had been pushed and I had been disrespected. And instead of going the way that everybody in the situation thought I was going to, and be like, I'm so sorry, my bad, I should have, I'll be better. I was like, you know what? Maybe there would be a time and a place for me to do all of that, and maybe it would be appropriate. That day is not today. And I think that level of self-awareness is something that we don't always have,
Mm-hmm.
and that it needs to be cultivated and it needs to be worked on, and we need to be okay with finding those moments where it's like, you know what? This is not, I don't, yes, I acknowledge they feel bad. I acknowledge what I did and what I said, not cool, obviously. But I'm also acknowledging the fact that that truths can be even more powerful when we're like, I know who I am, I know what I stand for, I know where my lines are. And being the bigger person doesn't always mean that you automatically say you're sorry.
Yeah. And I think too, like with that behavior of defaulting to automatically saying sorry, being the people pleaser, keeping everyone happy continues the cycle, right? And unfortunately, I do think that's when those explosive moments come. And maybe you
Mm.
didn't want to say exactly what you said, but you never said what you should have been saying, all those years before, and setting those parameters. And though, obviously the boundaries have been completely crossed, and you have that moment of like, I'm just going to fucking say what I want to say, rightly or wrongly. And then obviously there's the ripple effect and whatever comes out of that. But that's where I think a lot of us aren't able to live in our authentic selves, is
Mm.
because we want to keep the peace. And I was
Yeah.
talking to my mom about this the other day. I was like, I don't ever remember my parents fighting. Like there's not
Mm.
one like even harsh argument that I can consciously remember, which is weird for, they were married, I think almost 14, 15 years. And and she said because she's the middle of 9, she's like 6. She's like,
Yeah.
I kept the peace. And that's what I brought into my marriage. I just keep the peace. And that doesn't work. Keeping the peace does not work eventually, right? Either you're
Yeah.
miserable, and surely the other person's miserable if they're being a dick anyways. Like everyone's
Right.
just miserable.
Right. Yeah. Conflict resolution is such an important skill.
That no one
And I
gets
would
taught.
say, yeah. And you certainly, if you're never seeing conflict, then how would you ever even know where to begin? And I had the opposite. I saw a lot of conflict in my life. I will not go so far as to say that I am perfect at conflict resolution, um, at all. Definitely have things to learn there. Um, Mostly along the line of tact. I tend to not have tact at all. I'm very blunt usually. Um, or at least like, I've been worse. I've been way worse than I am today. But it goes right back to how are people perceiving you, of like what we were saying about like Trump, using him as an example of like, are you being arrogant, or are you to the point of hurtful and not influencing people well? Are you just being confident in where you stand, and what does that look like? And all of that centering around what you were just saying of which place, which side, or where in the medium, where in the middle is your most authentic self.
Mhm.
And can you stay in that authentic self while in conflict, while in tension? Because if we're not careful, we can lose that. We can lose ourselves in the pull, in the push. And I think that's where I was most proud of myself in this most recent situation, and what has allowed me to up level so far and so fast after it and like through it, is the fact that that is the one thing I can confidently say, is that through it I've been able to stay who I am. I've been able to be not just good but great, and to thrive in it, and to thrive in the fact that yeah, nothing is perfect, but the conflict actually like even out really well. I'm dealing with other things now, like other things that really, ancillary, like outside of the situation that have to still be dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've come to realize though is that like you if you make it a priority, figuring out how to stay you, your most brilliant, amazing you, through the conflict, it's not impossible.
Mm-hmm.
It's not impossible. But there are going to be people who think that you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, there are going to be people who are going to think that you're not being kind enough. There are going to be people who think that you're not being empathetic enough. There are going to be people who project their shit onto you, making it a you problem. And you have to, once again, stand strong and say, this isn't a me problem.
Yeah.
I get it. You want it to be, because that
Mm-hmm.
would make it really freaking easy for you.
Oh my God.
If it was
Yeah.
a me problem, it would make it really easy for you. I'm sorry, I'm not going to make this easy for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I had a situation in a psych case session that I did in Colorado, and this, really amazing, intuitive, like emotion feeler woman, like day 2 came up to me and she's like, "What did I do wrong to you?" It's like, "What?" Like, nothing. And she's like, "Well, I feel your energy." Da, da, da." And I was like, "Okay." I was like, "I'll go check myself." So I did my, self-evaluation, and I found a few things on myself, but I came to the conclusion that it was not my issue. Like, she was just a really loud character, which I guess our souls just don't align. And she could probably feel my soul being like, "Bitch, just calm down." like, that's it. It's not that I don't like you or I don't want you to be your
Yeah.
authentic self. And at the end of the session, the 4 days that we were there, one of her biggest realization is that she needs to not be so sensitive to other people's emotions that she feels. It was a her problem. And
Mm.
that's the cool thing about self-reflection and being that radical honesty and making those choices, is that once you have that awareness, you can really just like almost like checklist, like, okay, let me look at this in myself. Okay, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. Okay, I'm gonna have the confidence to be like, nope, your shit, not my shit. I've dealt with that, right? I'm not reflecting back to you what you think
Right.
I am. And I think that's a big
Yes.
thing when people hear like, oh, well, you're a mirror of everyone. Nope, not anymore. Like, that could be true in the beginning of your life and the people who you're hanging out with and all that stuff. But once you start looking at yourself in the mirror, I think that becomes less and less. And maybe that goes back to the whole loneliness and there's not a lot of people around, because maybe you connect with people and you're just like, okay, we're not an energetic match. Like, peace, love
Yeah.
you, but I'm out.
Yeah. Well, and to be able to do those corrections in the moment, like you were saying, of I'm gonna, okay, maybe I'll go look. I'll go look and see. Yeah. You
Yeah.
know, how many people are doing that? I
Yeah.
challenge everybody to do that. Can you do that? Can you suspend your your irritation and say, you know what, I'll go look.
Yeah.
I'll go look. Maybe there is something. But then to be confident enough to say, this is mine and this is yours, and I give back to you what is yours because it's not mine, and I will not hold it for you. That's one of the things that I say, like it's one of the spells that I use, if we want to like call it that. That one of the affirmations I use every single day. And it's important for me on multiple levels, but I was that person that carried a lot for everyone. And not just carry it, I would take people's shit
Mhm.
on purpose, y'all. Purpose. I
I
would
think a
take
lot
it.
of people can relate to that.
I will say this, I took it because I was strong enough to take it. You
Mhm.
guys, people like us do not just take stuff just because, I mean, sometimes it is because we're like, I'm better than everybody. Sometimes it's about that. But a lot of the time, more often than not, we're taking it from people because we are strong enough to handle it.
Mhm.
We know that y'all aren't. So we take it. At this point in my life, I am so happy to say that I am done taking people's stuff just because I'm strong enough to handle it.
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, everybody is strong enough to take their own shit. That saying of like God never gives you more than you can handle. I am God. You are God. We're all God, right? We're all the creator. So we never give ourselves more than what we can handle.
Mhm.
So no, I won't carry your stuff anymore. I'll help you. I'll
Yeah.
walk with you. If you ask me to carry you because you need that a little respite, sure. But it's not going to be forever.
Yeah.
I won't take all of your shit, right? And that is me being empowered within myself. That is me being very honest with myself. Call it arrogance, call it confidence, call it whatever you want. And I'll stand alone or in a group any day, happy to do it, but what is mine will stay mine. And anybody who feels like, I'm projecting stuff, I welcome the constructive criticism,
Yeah. I
and
think
if more of us could be like that.
yeah. I think too, in the sense of like, knowing that you're strong to handle that, you're eh, kind of like a different creature, right? Like everyone has to admit that like people just have different levels of, um, I don't know, for lack of a better word, abilities to handle shit,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Um, and that could be for a different podcast of why. But eventually, there has to be a breaking point for even those who can handle more. And if
Hmm.
you don't set those boundaries for yourself and you don't know what your boundary is, then surely you'll break eventually.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I would say that was the realization for me, that I needed to stop taking other people's stuff, because
Mhm.
I did break.
Yeah.
And when I broke hard.
Yeah.
It went into a very dark place, thoughts of suicide and all of that stuff.
Mhm.
And it became very real for me, of just how much wasn't mine.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
once I dug all that shit out, I was like, oh, I wouldn't have broken if I hadn't taken all of these other people's shit on, acting as if I could fix it.
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, it came down to, even if I could fix it, how did that serve them? And that's
Yeah.
why, as a healer, I very much am like, yes, I have the power and the ability to heal you in immediately, but how does that serve you? If I
Yeah.
do that for you, what lesson do you learn? And now I actively seek out teachers and healers and people who are going to help me, people who are going to coach me, people who are going to be in my life, who aren't going to say, "Let me take your shit and let me fix it for you." I want the person who's going to stand and say, "Let me teach you how."
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Like, you know?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people just don't realize that. That's like the basis of my coaching now, is that I want you to feel so empowered that if I recommend something or say something and it doesn't vibe with you, you tell me, right?
Mhm.
Like this whole like putting your whole trust, putting all your empowerment in healers and doctors and coaches and all that. Um, it's just not for the long run. You might feel
No.
some success along the way, but
Yeah.
eventually you're just not going to be able to do what you want to do unless you figure that shit out for yourself. And
Yeah.
being the person, I think a lot of people probably listening to this have been the saviors, have been the healers for the people around them, and haven't let the people around them fall on their own accord. And they're going to have to eventually let that happen.
Yes.
Or they're just going to have to keep going with the shit. And they know, they feel it, right?
Oh
And
yeah. I would
I
say nobody, this is not going to be like a surprise for too
yeah.
many people.
Uh-uh.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
y'all know.
Uh-huh.
And if you're triggered right now, then you really know.
But yeah, but I always say, when you're tired of your own bullshit or the bullshit around you, that's when you make moves. That's when you've just had enough, and you know the old ways of doing things have not worked and will never work, and so you have to shift. And like you say, even though you can heal people, even though you can guide them to the water, you just can't make them drink. And it is sad. I mean, I guess this comes full circle now. It is sad when you have to let go.
Mhm.
And you know what I'm going through with my dad right now. And I don't know when this podcast will air and where he'll be, but I mean, it's terminal cancer, right? Like, he has decided to shut the fuck down. He's out. He's out. And allowing that, for him to go through that process and not be the savior and not be the healer, is incredibly empowering in a way of knowing that that's okay, and that I've, as you've experienced too, almost have evolved in that full circle of like, I see you and I see your journey you're on, and I'm just going to be here to be with you and not try to fix you, not try to save you. Like, that's not my job. I
That is the mark of
retired.
the true healer. Yeah. That is the mark of the true master healer, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Is the person that can sit and say, I respect your choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I love you anyway, through it all, with you. And, that is the most powerful place to be.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, it feels like it. And obviously, thank you for your guidance and support in getting there.
Of course. Of
We're
course.
going to end on
It's
this
not
note.
easy.
No, yeah, yeah. And still growth, right? Like, I don't ever want to say like, oh, this healing journey is never done and all that kind of stuff. But I just feel like it's those seasons, right? Like, until, like, a tree always just keeps going through the motions, right? And never stops all through those seasons. And I have accepted that that's what being a human is too. It's these seasons of growth and expansion and retraction and going inwards and then exploding with beauty and all that kind of stuff. So it's an amazing journey if you choose it to be. All right, my friend, thank you so much again for sharing this space with me. It's always a pleasure. People can connect with you down in the show notes, and we'll see you again. Thank you so much again for joining us here on Choices. You can go ahead and leave a 5-star review because we're all friends here. But if you really want to move the conversation forward, please connect with us on our social media accounts, which you can find the links below. Have a beautiful week, and we'll see you next time here on Choices.